What is going on, guys, and welcome back to my 2021 Halloween special. I'm having a lot of fun doing this, and on today's episode, we are going to be talking about The Witch, directed by Robert Edgers and starring Anya Taylor-Joy. So The Witch tells the story of a 1630s Puritan family who is banished from their colony to live on their own at their farm in the middle of nowhere. When one of these family members mysteriously vanishes, the family soon realizes that there just may be a witch residing in the woods surrounding their home. This is one of those indie gems that got insanely popular, and it took me forever to watch it. For obvious reasons, because of the film's content. Back in 2015 when this came out, I was 10 years old. No way I'm watching this movie. To show this movie to a 10-year-old, that might as well be child abuse, at least psychologically. However, the first time I watched this film is always going to stick with me, particularly those first 10 minutes. When those first 10 minutes happened, look man, I knew of the film's reputation. I did not expect those first 10 minutes to just immediately throw you into it and to immediately be just horrifying, like genuinely scary. I'm actually learning about 1630s New England and Puritan families and banishment in the Plymouth colony and all that stuff right now in high school. And so when I went to rewatch this movie in preparation for this review, having that knowledge really just made it that much more effective. Because there was just something about like knowing what was happening back then and what it's like to actually get banished and just have to live on your own. There's just something about that, the isolation about that just makes it so much more effective. But enough about that, let's talk about the film itself. This possibly might be the scariest film that I have ever seen. And I've seen a lot of movies, particularly horror films, because I love the horror genre. I have seen so many horror films. This might be the scariest film that I've ever seen. It is a very watchable, intriguing, and enthralling movie. You're leaning over in your seat, you're completely sucked into it, and it's a great film in that way, but I would not describe this movie as fun, and I mean that as a compliment. This is a deeply dark, disturbing, and unsettling film. Not a fun watch, but it is extremely effective as a horror film. It's also gorgeously shot. Along with being one of the scariest movies I've ever seen, this is also one of the best looking horror films that I've ever seen. Everything is just so immaculately captured. The setting and some of the imagery in this movie is just forever burned into my skull. It is never going to leave my mind. It also feels very authentic to the time period. The costume design, the sets, it all looks fantastic. This movie also features powerhouse performances from everyone in the cast. As I said, this film stars Anya Taylor-Joy, and the other actors' names are slipping my mind, I'm sorry. Those of you who watch my channel, I'm just such a massive fan of Anya Taylor-Joy. She's just a perfect human being. I love everything about her, everything she's been in. She's always been the best part of it. She's an amazing actress, and this is definitely one of her best performances. Competition with her performance in The Queen's Gambit as my favorite performance of hers. Oh, but she was so good in Split, too. And Morgan. I can't decide. Don't make me choose. It's like choosing a favorite best friend or something. Not that I have any to choose from. I have friends. I have very, very close friends. If any of you are watching that video, it's just a joke. It's fine. We're still friends. Don't worry. We're good. And yes, all the witch stuff and all that stuff is very disturbing and very scary and very subversive of expectations. One of the most unsettling aspects of this film is actually the family dynamic of it. Because as I said, one of the family members is snatched away by this witch. And that starts to put the remaining family members at odds with each other, and seeing this family be torn apart and psychologically torture each other, and just under such psychological torment from this situation, like, that is scary to me. Because going insane, a family being torn apart by this stuff, falling into darkness by some overbearing other, like, that's terrifying to me. It's also a spectacularly written movie, and much of the dialogue was actually pulled directly from real historical accounts of witchcraft and encounters from back in the time period when this film takes place, the 1630s in New England. That definitely made some scenes in this movie much more disturbing. And say what you will about witchcraft and religion and all that stuff, what you do and don't believe. I personally am agnostic, so that's why I'm, when I watch movies like this, it can scare me just as much as a film where everything that's happening is completely possible and realistic. It makes it easier for me to enact suspension of disbelief when watching supernatural horror films. Also, another thing I want to talk about. The movie is called The Witch, and you may have noticed it's not spelled with a W. Y'all, talking about horror movies is just putting me in that mindset. I'm filming this past 11 o'clock at night. I swear I thought Y'all, reviewing these movies is screwing me up, man. I'm just in that horror mindset. That was genuine. I'm not just doing this for the video, I swear. I actually thought Jesus Christ. As I was saying, the title of this film is not spelt with a W, it's spelt with 2 V's, the VVitch. The reason it's spelt like that is because that's the way the word witch was actually written at the time. It was still pronounced witch, it wasn't pronounced VVitch. It was pronounced witch, but the letter W did not exist at the time. So, it's just another thing adding to that authenticity. But also, the movie does have a subtitle to the title called A New England Folktale. Technically, the name of the movie is The Witch, A New England Folktale. Now, the decision to make that the subtitle somehow just makes the film much scarier to me, and I do want to talk about some of the research Robert Eggers did. You know how fairy tales were originally actually extremely disturbing stories that ended very grimly, in a very grim way? A lot of people think of fairy tales and they think of a happy ending, everyone lived happily ever after. Fairy tales have not always been Disney. Fairy tales were originally supposed to be extremely cautionary tales and tragedies for the most part, in a very horrific sense of the word. Robert Eggers did not want to name the film A New England Fairy Tale because he felt like a lot of people would misinterpret that because of the cliche of fairy tales now. So he titled it A New England Folktale, which I actually think is more effective. Because you think of folk tales, and you think of all the research he did. This film was inspired by many different accounts of witchcraft and encounters back in the day. And so when you're watching it, it feels like you're just watching and knowing that these types of stories were told to children in that time period as cautionary tales, to stay away from this, dark magic, this witchcraft, to stay away from this stuff. These are the stories they would tell their children. As I said, I obviously don't necessarily believe that any of this stuff is real or logical or possible, but in the context of these are folk tales that people would tell, and just the ambiguity, I just imagine if I had been back then, if I had been living back then, and my parents told that to me as a cautionary tale, I would never look at the woods the same. Y'all, I swear, talking about these movies is making me very, very scared. I would never look at the woods the same back then. I would look out my window every night and just be I would just get chills, and I just wouldn't be able to sleep. And this movie bringing that to life, oh my god, it is just, it's so effective. Speaking of which, I looked up what Eggers researched, and I was only planning to read only the thing about why he titled it A New England Folktale, but I actually ended up reading a lot more. I went down the research rabbit hole. I just read up so much. I basically know everything about the research he did for this movie. For every aspect of it, the cinematography, the costume design, the dialogue, obviously the story itself and events in the story. I know everything about it now. I didn't plan to, but it's just really, the dedication was just so intriguing to read about. And it obviously paid off, because this movie is incredible. It also has one of my favorite endings in horror history. The ending of this film is amazing. Unmatched. It kind of reminds me of the end. Well, no, I don't want to say what it reminds me of, because I don't want to, hint at to anyone who hasn't seen it what the ending might be, because I don't want to spoil anything, but let's just say it's an incredible ending, and it might be my favorite ending to any horror film. Now, all of this being said, we're towards the end of the review now. Everything I said throughout this video, please know that this is a very unconventional film. This is not shot, edited, written, or designed like any of the cookie cutter, everyday horror films that are coming out right now. This is a very unconventionally made film. It's not meant to entertain you in a fun way. It's meant to get under your skin, it's meant to disturb you, and it does so perfectly. This film is definitely not for the faint of heart. This is one of those movies that I do want to share it with a lot of people, but I wouldn't be upset if that person just told me that they just never want to watch it. I would not be upset. I would completely understand. However, this is my review, so with all of that out of the way, let's go ahead and grade this thing. I'm going to give The Witch an A+. So guys, The Witch, have you seen it? What did you think about it? Comment below, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Also, have you seen Robert Eggers' other horror film, The Lighthouse? I wanted to talk about it this month, but, there were just a lot of movies, and I had to push that one away. I'm saving it for next year. I don't want to have 2 Robert Eggers movies in the same Halloween special. And also, what's your favorite horror film that's just unconventionally made? I forgot to mention, this is an A24 film, and A24 is my favorite movie studio. I love them. And obviously, they don't only make horror films, but they are very, very well known for their horror films. Another example of an A24 horror film, Hereditary, The Black Coat's Daughter. They make some truly banging horror films, so definitely let me know. What's your favorite A24 horror film? Thanks so much for watching, guys. It really does mean a lot. I'll see you in the next video, and until then, keep writing, keep shooting, and keep editing.